Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to bring to you David Waldas. And let me tell you about David. He is a gifted psychic channel and globally recognized leader in holistic personal development and transformative coaching. With a deep understanding of energy and consciousness, David helps individuals achieve alignment and flow through his proven methodology, the Aligned Living System. He helps clients have the experience of life-changing transformations, overcoming personal struggles, and achieving professional success. His work has impacted lives across the globe, with clients from various cultural backgrounds and experienced profound shifts. David has shared his insights through various platforms, established his authority in the field of personal development by his book, Insight, Influence, and Flow, a guide for business professionals. And he'll talk more about that today. We're going to talk about unlocking potential, empowering high-level executives and entrepreneurs. So please join me in welcoming my guest, David Waldas. David, so good to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you having me on your platform here.
You're very welcome. So we always start with two very easy questions. I always say this, and sometimes you prove me wrong. But first question, where do you live? Where do you call home right now?
I'm in Thousand Oaks, California, just outside of LA.
Yeah, I know that well.
Yeah, Santa Monica Mountains.
Yeah. How long have you lived there?
About 4 months. I tend to explore quite a few places. I've lived in Colorado most of my adult life, in Golden area, and then up in the mountains around Evergreen. Then I've lived in Oregon. Grew up in New York. So I lived in San Diego for 7 years.
Love San Diego.
Yeah, it's, that
See, this is why it's not always an easy question.
There you go. But for the last 5 months, I've been here.
Awesome. So we gave a little bit about what you do today and how you help people, but I'd love for you to share the journey that took you to what you do today. Often there are a lot of twists and turns along the way and certain moments that are pivotal in your life that really have informed your vision and your passion and really directed you to do what you do today. So if you could share a little bit about that story, that would be awesome.
Sure, absolutely. It's funny when I look at my life journey, I feel like I've lived several different lives. I grew up as a kid, I was just highly impacted by allergies and learning disabilities, dyslexia and ADHD, and I was allergic to everything. And
oh gosh.
And so my experience for the first quite a few years of my life was just kind of not quite being here. Yeah. And, my teachers didn't really know what to do with me because I also had this intuitive knowing, but I didn't seem to get my surroundings. So it was like I had the answers, but I had no idea what the question was. So there's this really weird experience that I think teachers definitely didn't know what to do with me. And, then when I was 18, I got diagnosed with ADHD. I was actually maybe 19. I was a freshman in college, and I was like somehow made it to college, I think, to play soccer more than anything else.
Yeah.
But I graduated like 132 out of 138 kids in my class. And all they knew was there was something wrong with me. They just didn't know what from their perspective. And so, in college, they gave me Ritalin, which is like Adderall. And all of a sudden, it just pulled me into the reality that everybody else was living. And, it really helped me function, helped me learn how to tune in and
Coexist.
coexist, right? Like, because I
Yeah.
was living in an alternate state of
Yeah.
consciousness my whole life, and I stayed with it for a while. And as I learned to, like, there was two worlds I could live in, I would kind of bounce back and forth. And I went on to get my master's degree and became a teacher for 12 years, a soccer coach, and became an entrepreneur. Was in sales for a while and was able to find a lot of success in those areas. And then on my 30th birthday, it kind of all changed for me because I didn't see myself as a psychic or even an intuitive. That world didn't really,
Right.
no, it was too weird, you know?
Well,
Like,
I mean, people didn't really talk about it that much. I'm
no,
66 and they for sure
right?
didn't talk about it whenever I was young. You were
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
weird kid.
Yeah, I know. I would probably have been like, said, well, he's on the spectrum, growing up
Hmm.
today, but instead it was just like, it's kind of a pain in the ass. He's a weird kid. He
Yeah.
doesn't seem to listen to a damn thing we say. He's
Yeah.
seems, and I did IQ test. My IQ was really high, but you know, I would either get D's or A's, and that was
Yeah.
even, more obnoxious because obviously you can do it if you get an A, and so you're just choosing not to, that
Mhm.
ADHD thing that we
Yeah.
understand now. Um,
Right.
but anyways, on my 30th birthday, I got invited to a psychic fair. And I was like, sure, I'm pretty open-minded. Let's go check it out. And I remember walking around the room, there's like 50 psychics. And there's this one woman, Sandy. I'm like, that's just who I'm supposed to talk to. It's just obvious. And I sit down with her and she starts shuffling her tarot cards and lays them out. And she's like, oh, I see you're planning this big move across the country, huh? But not everybody's happy with this, are they? But you need to do what's right for you. And I was just like, holy shit, how does she know this? And then she was like, the job you're wanting, it's going to come through in the next 2 weeks. And then she finished, she goes, oh, sweetie, I like this one. I'm hearing the same gift I have. It's going to open up for you too, and quick. And literally the next day, I was driving over to the realtor's office. We've been trying to sell our house, and she'd been acting really squirrely, and I wanted to terminate the contract with her. And she'd been ghosting me for about a week. And so I'm like, I'm just going to take matters in my own hands. I'm going to show up there and I'm going to get this taken care of. I'm going to be in charge of this. And I'm in the turn lane, getting ready to pull into her office. And I hear this subtle voice in the back of my head that goes, not now. And I ignored it. I'm like on a mission. It was totally ignorable. And then it got a little louder. It was like, not now. And I'm like, I heard it for sure. And it kind of weirded me out, but I'm like, I'm busy right now. I don't have time for whatever's going on.
I'm on.
And then it was not now. And I was like, oh, okay,
Oh.
I'm listening to that one. Drove home. About an hour later, I'm sitting on the couch and I hear, now. Get up, drive over to the realtor's office. As I walk in the front door, I'm opening the door. I see all the way through. She's walking in the back door, walks up with the paperwork, hands it to me. I sign it and I'm done with the contract. And I'm thinking, man, this world that Sandy opened up for me, life's going to be easy, right? Like, I have this superpower now. It was pretty naive though, because any of us that have a really strong intuitive
Yeah.
nature know that, we're not just here to have an easy street life.
That's
Like, it's not
right.
just here to unfold, lay down in front of us, but we're here to grow. We're here to develop ourselves. And so the more intuitive we are, in a way, we just fast track it. We get steered into experience after experience that's going to help us grow in the exact way we need to. And, we get that in life anyways. But when we're intuitively guided, it took me a long time to figure that out. I'm like, oh, another big opportunity, also known as a big learning moment. And, like, my life became all about personal and spiritual development. And
Yeah.
it just got really weird, because I was a soccer coach at the time. I was,
Yeah, I was gonna say your friends probably thought, what the heck?
yeah, it was, they didn't know what to do with me again.
Yeah.
Right? Another theme
Again.
of my life. But yeah, then things just started falling out of my life, that weren't serving me. And that was part of it, whether it was alcohol or whether it was, whatever. I just felt like how clear I needed to get, and the guidance just came in. And so, uh, you know, that kind of developed for quite a while, and I worked as a psychic, and really enjoyed that work. But I also felt like I was just kind of band-aiding people. It was like they'd come in and they'd want guidance or they'd want clarity about their future, and the idea of being like a fortune teller, like, that just wasn't,
Who you
it wasn't
are.
appealing to me.
Mm.
And then in 2016, so it was like 8 years ago, I was driving through Vail, Colorado with my family, and we were actually heading from San Diego back to Colorado for the summer to visit and to work. And as I came around the last corner before the pass heading up in Vail, there's this huge, beautiful rainbow coming down the distance. And I'm like, that looks like it's coming down the highway. And sure enough, as I came around the last corner, it was, and we drove into it. And as we drove into it, we were just covered in these refracted rainbows. It
Oh,
was
how
the most
gorgeous.
bizarre
That's
thing. I
so
remember
gorgeous.
my daughters Olivia and Ava were sitting in the back seat. They were like, look at them. There's a couple driving.
Where's the
Exactly.
unicorn? Where's the
I know, it was such a bizarre moment. And there's a couple driving the car next to us. They had their hands up in the air, like looking at the refracted rainbows. And I don't know how they were driving, because like I didn't know how I was driving, because in that moment I popped into a different state of consciousness,
Yeah.
which was, I always knew my world is like the grounded, the father, the business person, the entrepreneur, or this psychic, intuitive, tapped in person over here. And those
Right.
worlds just blended. And I discovered this place that was, right, what I call the estuary of consciousness, right where ordinary and non-ordinary reality come together. And you can access both without bouncing back and forth between these two very separate experiences. And I just knew how to get there. I knew how to take people there. I knew who to work with, and it took me quite a while to really unpack it and turn it into what's the Aligned Living System now. But it's gone through several new versions of it. In fact, in the last 6 months, there's been a whole nother wave of information that has kind of shown up in me that really has solidified this and made it so much more concrete and really, I think, applicable for just foundational way of being, to show up in the world in a powerful way within inside yourself, really clear about who you are and what you want to bring, and just not distracted by all the other ways that we could show up, all the other ways the world's always asking us to show up.
Yeah.
And from then on, it was just a whole new thing. And it became literally, I'm away to Colorado with clients the next day, and I sat down with them. They're like, all right, what are we doing? I'm like, something new. There's this whole new thing now that showed up yesterday, and boom, it just took off.
Wow.
And it's been a blast to help people access that same state of consciousness and way of being in the world, and what it clarifies for them, and what it takes away as far as distractions go, and the confusion of who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. Because I think it is confusing.
So why don't you just share just a little bit of what this 10-week transformation program really looks like for a client?
Yeah. It's funny whenever I talk about it, like I have kind of set ways I talk about it, but there's always, whoever I'm talking to, there's a certain kind of walk in that makes sense for them, because we're all coming into this experience with our own challenges, our own strengths, our own fears, our own experiences that led to all that. And so, to me, energy is one of our strongest forms of communication. And, because it's invisible, we often don't think about it. We may think about body language, maybe think about our voice, we think about our, the words, obviously. But when we look at the energetics that we're coming in with, I know from my own experience, because I was ignored I mean, it's funny to me, like, I got this download 8 years ago, and I was like, this is going to change the world. And I talked about it, and nobody was interested. Nobody, and that was, it took about 5 years before I think it was really in a place where this made sense. And so I had lots of runway to get used to
get
it.
it good.
Yeah. But ultimately, when people step into this program, the first thing we do is we look at how we show up in the world. And most of us show up in the world, if we're empathic, we're out kind of feeling everybody else's stuff. And I know you talk a lot to speakers, and to me, like when I would speak, it would be so disorienting to me. I'd kind of have these out of body experiences, because I'm tracking the audience, and I'm like, that one's bored. This person here is excited.
Yes.
I don't think they know what the hell I'm talking about, but they find it very interesting. And I'd have like an experience with each individual and I'm like, okay, that's right. I'm supposed to be doing something here. And just the amount of information we take in that's just not that relevant to us, right?
Yeah.
And how distracted we get by what's not us. And so the initial steps are about going, you know what, this world's very interesting and it has a lot of information for us. But there's also the most relevant information is in here. The most relevant information is who I am, what I'm here to bring, what I have to say. And I want that to be an interaction, but I don't want to start from the outside in. And a lot of us start from the outside in. The feedback loop, we walk into a room and we go, oh, what's going on here? Oh, okay. And we respond to it. And when we align inside of ourselves with these really simple techniques and it's a restructuring of our energy, we show up and we bring ourselves and we watch how the world responds to us. And that initial shift of referencing internally rather than externally, or we may, you know, a lot of people when they first come, they're like trying to bring themselves so powerfully because it's scary, right? And so what do we do when we walk into a room where we maybe don't feel as empowered, or we're trying to find our power? Is we often create, you know, some sort of momentum. Is yeah, yeah, right. We have a lot of different experiences. We shut down. But what I've found too is that momentum is a big thing people use. And so they go, well, you know what? I got to make an impact. So I'm going to come in really fast. I'm going to come up with this big, you know, exciting thing. And it's like, well, changing the velocity, you know, that doesn't really work. And so I looked at the physics, you know, of momentum, which is basically mass times velocity, like how big we are and how fast we're going. And so those are kind of the things we can play with. But when we ground into ourselves and we are able to just find that safe space inside of ourselves where we're just clear, we know what we want to say, we know where we're coming from, and our audience is going to interact with us and we're going to interact with them, but they're not going to move our base. Yeah. And when our audience can move our base, we're in trouble, right? We're always scrambling. Yeah. And so when we can ground that in and just have that momentum where we can move slower, we can settle in, we can still get excited. Like, it's great to be dynamic, but not in order to try to push something through. And so that is the initial step of it, is just grounding into ourselves and reversing that feedback loop where we reference off ourselves first.
And I think, you know, you see that where people, when they meet certain individuals, they think, oh, you know, they have something. They're so confident, they have such charisma. And I think it's because just what you said, that they're authentically who they are, and they are grounded, and they know that they're comfortable in their skin. And so that just resonates, and they're not trying to make everyone love them. They are okay with just being okay with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, they recognize it's their greatest gift.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, it's funny too, because when I look back on my history with this, like, I don't know what my life would look like if I didn't get that download in 2016, if I didn't have that spontaneous experience, because, you know, like, the world just pushed me around so much. And so I would just focus on my gifts. Like, how can I give? How can I give? Because that was the only way I could really be okay. You know, if I wasn't doing that, I was highly anxious. I was, you know, had a lot of challenges with anxiety before. I had, you know, all that stuff, because I was just basically, the world would just run through me, and it had, you know, a free pass to get through. I was laughing growing up. In my house, my brother's room was on the far side of my room, so he had a throughfare to get. And I was like, I think I just kept that as my energetic signature for life. You know, the world had a throughfare for my world, and I see that with so many people, where it's just like, how do we claim this? And the tools are very simple to claim it, and surprisingly effective and fast.
So you just talked about your gifts, and in your website, you talk about micro adjustments to harness our greatest gifts and trust ourselves. So talk a little bit about that. How can we learn to do those micro adjustments?
Yeah. And so, you know, when we start to play with the tools of the Aligned Living System, you know, which once we have this reference point to go, you know, like, most people don't ever have the experience to know that their inner world is very different from other people's inner worlds. You know, we make assumptions about, oh, this is what it's like to be me, so I assume they must be similar, or they must be similar. But in working with people, you know, I get a really deep glimpse into their inner world. In fact, an experience of it, and I realize how different everybody's inner world is. And you know, when we can quiet the noise from outside of us, and the world just steps back, and we have that experience maybe you've had, like being out in the woods, or, you know, I love being out in the woods in the wintertime, you know, that where everything's just cushioned and like silent, or maybe out in the water. When we can create that experience inside of ourselves, like, I had no idea that was actually available without creating a massive shift in my outward circumstances, because, you know, that was the experience. Whatever was around me was the inner experience. And so when we can create that same quiet, that kind of blanket of silence, we start to hear ourselves in a different way. And all those influences just step back. And when we do that, we start to go, you know what? Maybe I don't like that as much as I thought I did. Maybe I liked it because it made other people more friendly to me. Or like I always joke, people would say, God, you must be the happiest guy I know because you smile at everybody everywhere. And I was like, I do, don't I? And then as I started doing this work, I still smile a lot, but not like I used to. And for a different reason, I smile because I'm happy, not because I'm trying to elicit them to be in a better place so it feels better to be around them. And I was like, oh, that's really messed up. I had no idea. I'm always like better energy, please. You know, please be a little less angry or whatever you got going on. Because, and so, so when we do that, you know, we just start to create these natural micro adjustments to go, you know what, like my behavior is just different because I don't need to do the things to manage my outer world in the same way anymore. And we don't realize that that's like probably between 70 and 90% of our actions. And when it's not a requirement anymore, all of a sudden now it's like, well, what do I do with all this freedom, right? All this expansion inside me. And, you know, the next tools are about that, about how to harness that, about how to really get in touch with what is it that I want from this place, not what is it that I want to make the world be okay for me, not what is it that I want to figure out how to manage myself in this world. But if I don't have to do that, what do I want to create? What do I want to bring? And once we start to play there, like the adjustments start to happen very quickly because we realize how many actions, how many thoughts we have, how much of our way of being, how much of the overgiving or the undergiving, the withholding is about managing that. And it's not natural for us. It's responsive. And when we start to feel what's natural for us, we just go, oh, this is how I want to show up. This is who I am. This is what feels good. And I'm not doing it to elicit some sort of a difference from my surroundings.
So good. So many of us, both entrepreneurs and executives, I have been both, find ourselves focusing on what other people think. Why is it important that we stop caring about what others think? I discovered it in my 50s, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you know, it's I think it's one of these things that like we have to for a long time because it's our survival, you know. And to me, when I look at the way our world's set up, most of us are in institutions and organizations or family structures where our survival techniques require us to prioritize other people's opinions or what they want from us or who they want us to be. And, you know, it's how we maintain a sense of acceptance. It's how we maintain a sense of I'm going to be taken care of. I'm okay. And to break that, you know, like that's the most foundational piece. Like, you know, like is my family going to accept me? And at certain points, we start to go, you know what? I don't give a shit anymore. Right? Like,
exactly.
And then we start to desire this greater sense of self, which is huge. And, you know, why does it take so long? Well, I think it's because our inner world depends on our outer world. And once we disconnect that, you know, and I don't mean disconnect it as in there's no reference at all to it, but usually like 90% of our experience, particularly for empathic people, is the outer world coming in. And when we reverse that, where it's like, yeah, I want to know what's going on, but maybe a light overlay over me, like 10%, and then 90% is here. And so, you know, if we're not in charge of our inner world, if we're not doing the things that light us up, you know, and I know this in my own life, I see it in client after client's lives, where we are able to create something through perseverance, maybe through determination. We even manifest stuff and go, my God, that was magical. I can't believe I created this. And then we go, and now that it's here, I don't want it. Like I realized I was creating it for the wrong reasons. I was creating it to make other people happy. I was creating it, you know, because it's what I thought I wanted, because I wasn't in touch with myself. And when we stop doing that, you know, like if we're really going to be fulfilled, and I'm not talking about happy moments or like, but that deep sense of fulfillment, that deep sense of like what I do matters, and it feels like I'm on my purpose. We need to get all that influence out of us, because there's not too many of us that grew up in situations that go, you know who you are? Like, I see you so clearly, and this is what I want for you. We see, you know what would make me feel happy? You know what would make me feel comfortable is if you would be this. And if you would fit in like this, and if you would kind of tone yourself down here and expand yourself over here, and then we're like, we're just bending ourselves to be who the world asked us to be instead of who we truly are.
As parents, I think, and there is no manual for us as parents, but as
None.
parents, we tend to do that. We want to protect
Sure.
our children and have them have a better life and
Mhm.
not live through the experiences. But I I will say that the reason it took me to 50 to not care anymore is that I had the experience. I saw that
Mhm.
I didn't need to be worried about things that I worried
Yeah.
about when I was younger. And so I do believe, it's
Mhm.
almost like you're in a master's of life. you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can't get a master's when you're 5 or 10 or 15 because
Right.
you
Right.
haven't experienced life. But at some point you will get that. And so not to say that everyone out there has to wait till they're 50 to find that, but
Sure.
it's really to understand that everything you're going through is for a
Mhm.
reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And for you. That it's,
Yeah.
when we cooperate with what the universe is bringing us, it takes us where we need to go. We get caught up in what's happened, what's brought us there. And I always joke with my clients, like, so this feels pretty complete, this module you've been working through. Are you done, or do you need to take another lap around the tree and come back before we're ready to move to the next level of you? Because we give so much meaning to the
Yeah.
experiences we've had or are having, and as opposed to seeing it as this is what's moved me from here to here, and
Mhm.
now I'm ready to have another experience. And of course,
Yeah,
the
that's
trauma
those
is
micro adjustments.
absolutely, and we do a lot of trauma release stuff too, because
Yeah.
that's what keeps us stuck. That's why we're like, you know what?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not quite done with this yet. I need to call in another horrible business partner or another horrible relationship, or I need to go embarrass myself in some way, or I need to go, sign a contract that doesn't honor me, and now I'm scraping by, or whatever it is. You know, we have to clear that out. And so that is the next phase of the aligned living system. Is we go inside, we clear out the space, and people always have what I call the honeymoon period, where they're just like, oh my God, it's so nice not to be inundated by everybody else's stuff. And then they'll be in this clear state and they'll go, oh, what's that? Am I leaking somebody else's stuff into me? And they're like, oh no, that's coming from me. That's like and then we realize, but that's our trauma coming up, or that's our coping mechanisms coming up.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that, though, is when we're internal and we're not corded with the outer world, like, we clean it up so fast. Because one of the big things that keeps people stuck is collective wounds. And we often trauma bond. We connect with people and go, "Oh my God, my childhood too. My mother, yeah, just like that. Oh, you know how it's affected me? You too. Okay, let's lock this in."
Mhm.
And when we're trying to clear ourselves and move past that so that we can show up in our more powerful way, in our more expressed way, in our more fulfilling way, if we're not connected, like literally energetically plugged in, corded to those collective wounds with a whole bunch of the people that maybe aren't in a place where they're ready to let go of it or even desire it. It's their identity, maybe, is what keeps them
Yeah.
safe and stuck.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to move when we're plugged into that. And so when
Yeah.
we're unplugged from that, people go like, this is my little part of it. This is my signature that I used to plug into that collective wound that felt bigger than me. And now when I'm unplugged from it, this little signature, like, I'm bigger than it. And so now I can
Mhm.
decide that I'm not doing that anymore. And it's a very interesting experience, because I think this is what we often experience with life: is stuff either seems bigger than us or we seem bigger than it. When we seem bigger than it, we conquer it. When it seems bigger than us, we get knocked around by it.
Yeah.
And when that changes,
Wow.
it's another micro adjustment.
Well, time has flown by, and you've shared so much great information, some insightful and thought provoking. And so I
Mhm.
hope that the audience out there will take some time, maybe listen to this a couple times to
It's
see
always a
if you
lot
have
in
any
there.
questions that you want really to talk further with David. And so if that's the case, as always, I'll share the slide. If you're just listening, you should have taken notes all along, but go quick, grab that paper and pencil. I'm going to give the website and the social media locations. Everything will be on my YouTube channel. Findyourleadershipconfidence.com is the website as well. So check out Vicki Noethling YouTube or findyourleadershipconfidence.com. So the website is davidwaldas.com. That's DavidWaldas.com. Facebook is David Aaron Waldas, davidaaron.waldas. YouTube is at David Waldas 6559. Instagram is David_Waldas. And if you really want to be inspired, why don't you check out his podcast, which is the Aligned Living System Podcast. I'm going to turn it over to David. He's going to talk to you a little bit about, if you go to his website, what you might find, resources, any links that might help you, as well as where he spends the most time on social media, and a little bit about what he puts out there in his on his podcast. So David, it's all yours.
Oh, thanks, Vicki. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think going to my website is probably a great place to start. And there's access to my book on there as well, Toward the Insight, Influence, and Flow, which has a lot of the science behind this too. As an intuitive, I always just knew things, right? And I'd get these downloads and I'd teach the information, and then I'd find out afterwards how it all fit together. And so when I wrote my book, I was challenged by my publishing agent to write it from a scientific perspective. And so I went and did all the research and kind of reverse engineered it. And it was really fun to discover all the scientific evidence that already exists for why the Aligned Living System works. And so it's a really interesting walk-in with the science of it. And it has a lot of the tools in there. And so that's a really easy way. The Audible's on there as well. And then, when you go to whether it's my Instagram or my YouTube as well, a lot of it's going to give you access to the podcast and clips from it and little bits of insight that come out of this. And really the work I do is it starts with a 10-week program with clients. And so I have group programs. I do still do a couple of one-to-ones, not so much, but I do mostly small group, like 5 to 7 people, which still gets a lot of personalized time and space for people to have a lot of, like I'm always channeling information through. So there's always something specific for each individual, but it's also collectively valuable too and impactful. And so that's all there in the breakdown of it. Once people go through the 10-week program, then there's opportunities to have a mastermind, and we'll be having some retreats coming up. But one of the things I'm super excited about, and this has been kind of a very recent shift, is doing the Aligned Living coach training. And so I've been training coaches in the system for like 7 years now, but I had it hidden on the backside. Like I didn't advertise it anywhere. I didn't tell anybody. I would just, if I had a client that seemed like a good match, I would kind of whisper it to them and then train these small groups. And just in the last 6 months, really, I've just gotten this real clarity of this is the next thing for me to really put my energy into. And so it's great for people that are already coaching or people that are interested in coaching. I know there's gonna be a lot of health coaches coming through that want to expand their impact, or business coaches. And so I'm doing a Aligned Living coach training too. That's a really powerful program and includes the 10-week program in it too. And so all that information's coming onto my website, but the 10-week program information's already there.
Fantastic. David, it's been just great to have a conversation with you. Thanks for sharing all the ways that they can connect with you, and for all the tips about how we can really unlock our potential.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun chatting.
As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.